Welcome to the Business Spotlight series. I am Everardo Resendiz, known around here as Coach Ever. I am a certified executive and business coach here at Action Coach in Northwest Louisiana. Today, I have Mark Napoli, the CEO of Core Medical, founder and CEO of Core Medical. We're going to be talking about the business, the journey to business ownership, the challenges, best practices, and cherry picking to what it really is like to build and operate a business. If this is your first time on the channel, please be sure to subscribe and like so that you can get notifications when we drop new conversations just like this one. And so, Mark, welcome and thank you for being here today.
Thanks very much. I'm excited to talk to you.
Well, will you share with us a brief overview of your background and tell us a little bit about the business?
Okay. My background is I'm a private practice physician. I'm from Monroe, Louisiana originally, and started out college here at Northeast Louisiana University, now ULM. And then I spent about 15 years schooling and training, working my way from the South up the East Coast into New England, and then came back to join a private practice and spent about 10 years doing that. And then I started Core Medical, uh, kind of at a, out of a discovered need, mainly from, the business, community. And, the way that got started was just a recognition that as an interventional cardiologist, which is what I do, that's my, training and trade. I realized that there were two groups of people who presented to a cardiologist or in the hospital having a cardiac emergency or cardiac urgent situation. One group is, the very elderly, where time just kind of catches up to you, but the other group is working people, and it's much more catastrophic for them when they have a disruptive event, especially from a cardiac standpoint, because it interrupts their productivity. It takes them from being, somebody who's a producer to somebody who can, either temporarily or permanently becomes a dependent. And it's bad for them, it's bad for their family, and it's bad for their business or their employer. And I started to see things in a different light as the working families, who presented to me. You could trace that back to basically a cascade of missed opportunities to prevent those bad things from happening. And the you know the individual practitioners within the healthcare system really try and do their best, but they have constraints within that system the way it is in the status quo. And I felt like you can't. I mean, healthcare is immensely complicated, um, and I knew that there was no one solution to the whole thing. Everybody knows healthcare has big problems, but what I saw as something that I could do something about was affect how healthcare is approached from the employer standpoint, and
Mm.
just had some informal conversations with area businesses, and a couple things really stood out to me. One was hardly anybody outside of healthcare knows the difference between healthcare insurance and healthcare itself, and the term healthcare is just conflated to include all of it. And the next thing is that uh, even the most erudite business people who are not in healthcare, they run they manufacture, they have a service and technology, or other type of sectors. They run a healthcare business. If they're a big enough employer, and that's usually a huge cost to them. Sometimes it's the biggest cost, and very few of them um, have any hands-on management of that. It's all outsourced to other vendors or brokers who basically take control and just tell them what to do. And it turns out, and this was described to me by one of my first clients, is that every business has vendor contracts, right? And you have some good and some not so good. Well, the healthcare, according to him, the healthcare vendor contract is the worst imaginable one you can think of. Like, think of the worst vendor contract that you have in your business, where you don't know what anything costs until after the fact. You don't, there's no way to get out of it. It's evergreen, and there's no accountability. Like, the results are what you get. The only thing you can count on is it's going to cost more. And so I thought there was a way to approach that, especially with a company that has a self-funded or partially self-funded insurance plan. Um, and so that's kind of the basis of how I felt like there was a space to make a difference and maybe disrupt the status quo model.
Very interesting. And so that's the birth of Core Medical. And so what do you guys do?
Well, we're a business to business service, and we provide direct health care to working families on behalf of their employer. And we also serve as an advocate and an educator to employees of a business client.
And so if I'm tracking these correctly, um, you're basically bridging that gap between the place where people are paying insurance, they're self-insured, right? And they have to cover the
Right.
costs of that. And the point where there's something major that happens, and the full force of that self-employer, will come to play. Is that what I'm understanding here?
Well, more specifically, what we do is we try and keep that major thing from happening, right? So a self-funded company, what we refer to in the insurance part, is where the company itself is the insurer. They may have a broker and an administrator who manages their claims and their contracts with the healthcare providers and the insurance companies, health systems, things like that. But essentially, a company that's big enough, it is its own insurance company. So on the top, there's the money, they are the payer, and then in the middle, there's the employees themselves who are their, for lack of a better word, their patients. Um, and then down below that in the stack is the health care itself, the hospitals and the urgent cares and emergency rooms and the specialists and the primary cares and the pharmacy and all that. So if if you're a carrier controlled business where you just pay a premium, then the insurance company takes that risk and you have no control, and you pay a premium regardless of how much money your employees spend. If they
Right.
spend a whole lot, your premium tends to go up. If you don't spend very much at all, your premium tends to go up. But you're paying to offload that risk onto the insurance company.
I
If you're
understand.
a self-funded company, you take the risk to a certain extent, and you have sort of reinsurance and catastrophic coverage, things like that. But for the day to day, you as a business take that risk and you pay out claims as they come along. So the incentive for you is to take some control of that healthcare, right? And the system as it is it's not easy for a company to do that. So
Right.
what we do is we facilitate that company taking some control back. So the when I first got started with this, and it was before I even had an idea to to launch a company, the idea came from the meeting. So I was called in to a large company who's based here in Monroe, and I did, they just asked me to come, and they had some questions about healthcare. And so I was brought into their boardroom, which is this huge room, this giant surfboard table. And they had just finished a telepresence meeting. This is before Zoom and all this took off. Uh, and so they had screens up on the wall and they were talking to people remotely. And they were all on one side of this giant table. I mean, it had to have been, it seems like it was like 15 yards long, you know, and they sat me by myself on the other side of the table. And they said, yeah, it's very intimidating. I mean, there was an admiral, you know, a retired admiral from the Navy. There were CEOs of these big companies. And I'm just nobody, you know, I'm just shade tree heart doctor from, you know, middle of nowhere. And they said, look, we have a board meeting every 3 months, every quarter, and one of the things that comes up is how much money we're spending on healthcare, and what little perceived value we get for all that money that we're spending. And we've talked to health systems, we've talked to consultants, brokers, and everybody everybody just seems to uh, talk about things in terms of ultimately how it's going to benefit them without a clear picture of how it's going to benefit us. And there's a few people in the room who know you, and you've had informal conversations or just casual conversations with them, and you say things to where it's going to, you know, you put it in a light where it's going to benefit us. And we just want you to kind of tell us what you think we ought to do. And I was, you know, completely unprepared and put on the spot. But luckily, I kind of read the room with this giant table. And I said, okay, you guys are the company on that side. And you can imagine me, I'm healthcare, I'm the whole thing, right? The stuff I mentioned before, the hospital, the emergency room, the urgent care, you know, and on and on. My job as a business is to make things cost as much as possible for you. And there is nothing you can do about it. You have no control. And there's no accountability. Like I said, terrible vendor contract. And they say, yeah, we get that part. We want to know what to do about it. And I said, well, the most important part of this side of the table is the gateway, right? Is the primary care. And you're a self-funded company, as I described before. I said, so you own the insurance, you have the employees. Why don't you own any of the healthcare? It's like you should vertically integrate that. I said, the most important part of it is the primary care part. If you can take care of people and remove that friction, cost, and accessibility and accountability, um, then you can take that big pie that's divided up into all these different things in healthcare and take control of the primary care. The whole pie shrinks as far as cost, and you're not controlling that cost by denying people care or creating obstacles for them to get care or unburdening part of your cost onto the employee. You're just spending that money that you're already spending in a smarter way. And you're doing it by improving accessibility and the healthcare experience. You can make healthcare a really good experience as opposed to what normally people have, where it's scary, it's uncertain, and it's unpredictable.
It's
Um,
almost like every time when you go to the doctor, it's because there is a problem. Very rarely
people
people take advantage of the possibility that there could be things that they could do to prevent being,
exactly.
unhealthy.
And why? And so why is that? Why are we reactionary rather than proactive?
Well, one of those gateways is the cost, right? It costs you money
Well,
to go
yeah,
to the doctor.
the whole experience is not great, right? You know it's going to cost you, and you know you're going to have to sit and wait, and there's opportunity costs. You have to leave work to do it. And so what I thought we could do is we could remove those pain points from from somebody who works for a living. The pull through that I usually give these businesses is, um, there's three consumer segments in healthcare, right? There's people who are connected and affluent, and they can kind of work around the system and get what they need. They can take those resources and do what they want with them because they can afford it, or they know people, they're connected. And then you've got the people who basically are are on the government, subsidized side, where it's somebody who's put into the system all their life, and then now they've got Medicare, and there's a social contract there where they're cared for, or there are people who are in things like Medicaid, where They just can't seem to take care of themselves, and they need the state to help them do that. But in the middle, you've got the working families, right? And they have to compete for resources with the people who are connected, and because there's a limited amount of healthcare,
Right, right, right.
and they have to pay for all the people that the government supports. So who's looking out for those people in the middle? And I look at a business owner and I said, it's you. You're the one who's taking care of these people. And so are you doing the best job you can by saying, well, we've got to raise your premiums and we've got to narrow our networks and we've got to make you fill out all these forms in order for you to get, good effective primary care. Get rid of all of that. That's somebody else telling you that that's a good plan. It's a terrible plan. What you need to do is you need to make it as easy as possible for people to get early access to healthcare. And if they do, you're gonna dramatically reduce the downstream costs where you have no control, and it's completely a terrible experience for everybody, the employer, the employee, and the providers. I would much rather take care of somebody who has a minor problem than a major problem.
Of course.
So it's a triple win. And so getting back to that first company, it was CenturyLink at the time, and it's morphed into Lumen, and they're still our client, our biggest client, and our biggest champion in this project. But they had at the time they had about 2,000 people who were on their health plan in Monroe, Louisiana, and at the end of that, so they said, okay, let's do this. We want you to do it, and we put an on-site clinic into their corporate headquarters after a lot of a lot of planning. But the year that we started, at 12 months, we saved them $1.2 million in healthcare costs
Wow.
on 2,000. Yeah, and so we did it again and again and again.
That's amazing. Very, very
Yeah,
cool.
it's been really
Okay.
fun.
Well, let's set the stage for the viewers and listeners. What does the current ownership structure is? I mean, are you the sole owner, founder, CEO, all the things, manager in chief?
I, yeah, I am. I am the owner and 100% owner, and I have an amazing team of managers and providers. Um, and we haven't taken on any investors or private equity or venture capital. Healthcare is tricky, right? Because it's a completely different type of business than probably anything else that you interview people for, because the 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 client is putting their trust completely in the provider, the forward-facing person in the business. They don't know anybody in the back office. So investors in healthcare, I'm very dubious of, because I think of them as kind of like hitchhikers. If you take on hitchhikers on your road trip, um, you're you're assuming that everything's going to go okay, but it's a risky proposition. I mean, they could grab the wheel at any time, and if you take on a huge group of them, you're certainly going to get, some dilution of your control.
Right, right,
And physicians like me are, stereotypically, kind of control freaks, I guess. But the thing about this type of business is that, the ultimate duty is to that patient. And I don't want anybody else getting in the way of that, number one. Number two, I do have a team, and so far, haven't given them equity in the business. That may be coming at some point, but I'm not planning on selling this. This is something that is started out as a side hustle and is growing into, as I get older, I'm not going to be getting up at 3 in the morning, and treating heart attacks when I'm 75 years old. But this is something that I can do long term,
right.
and I don't plan on selling it. And so the equity in the business would really be meaningless in the short term, at least. So I want to continue to be in a position to where I have control of how patients are taken care of, number one, and number two, if I'm controlling it, I have to take all the risk. I don't want to burden somebody with risk if they're not going to get a payout in the short term. That could change long term,
Right. Right.
but I really want to protect my team from any kind of risk because they're so good, they're so amazing, and they make this easy and fun for me to do, you know. And I feel like I compensate them in other ways, but I don't want to I don't want to create something where there's an expectation of a big payout one day because I don't plan on getting rid of this. I'm happy to continue to disrupt the healthcare sector and just face the consequences.
Well, I mean, more than a disruption, it really feels that it's more like covering a need that was already there. There
Yeah.
wasn't really a good solution in place, and you're coming in with it. And so I love it. Now, tell me a little bit about the role that you play or roles that you play in the business. Um,
Well,
as head physician, I guess there's some responsibility.
yeah, I have a lot of spinning plates. So my day is, I get started pretty early, and I spend a couple hours answering emails, making phone calls, doing outreach to potential customers and clients in Core Medical, spaced into hospital calls, things like that. I'm still a full-time cardiologist. So I make a couple of, three or four high level decisions a day early in the morning. And like I said, I have this great team who helps me carry those out or gives me advice and tweaks the plan. And then they just take care of problems that I don't always anticipate. They're very autonomous. Then I head to the hospital about 8:30, 9 o'clock to do some procedures, and then I go to my cardiology clinic where I concentrate on preventative cardiology and then interventional cardiology if things get if people present a little bit late in the process, and then I come back afterwards after clinic's done, wrap up any hospital things, answer a few urgent emails, but I try and keep the emails just to once a day in the morning. Um, Try and get a workout in, and then start it all over again after hopefully some sleep. But
Wow.
my main role in Core Medical is more of an administrator, and then I'm the main outreach to potential clients, and then the the communicator if there's anything that a client needs, an existing client needs that we can help with, and
So
then the
it's
balls.
more like you're really dealing with the business development portion of it, and the let's call it the high level service, right? While your team really runs day to day operations and they work through whatever needs to be provided to the single users, right? Um,
Right. We have
so
some really great providers, and then they'll lean on me to give them advice about patient care. But I'm not a day to day. I don't see the patients in the primary care space. That's not what I'm really trained to do. But if somebody has a more complicated problem, we move it up the chain to some of our physician collaborators, and then if it's specifically within my realm, then I kind of give advice. And if they need to be connected with a specialist, then we facilitate that as well outside of our
well,
primary care, advanced primary care.
it just sounds to me like perhaps the difficulty in business development and getting people to agree to utilize your guys has to do more with how different all the setups for healthcare are in everywhere. It's like every company is different, and so it really
Right.
takes a personalized approach. You have to
It
customize what you
does. Yeah,
offer. Okay, that is
absolutely. Yeah.
that is it.
Each,
Certainly is a
yeah,
challenge.
every client. Yeah, every client is unique.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're
Okay,
back on
I'm
now.
sorry. So I'm sure there's other operators offering primary care. Um, how are you different than them?
Well, like I mentioned, one thing is we we don't we don't have any outside investment, and we're not owned by an insurance company or a hospital. We don't have non-healthcare people investing in the company, and we offer a multitude of services, both in person and virtual. Um, and we do on-site clinics. We do a collaborative model where smaller businesses can come in with very little risk and or capital outlay to participate collectively in a geographic proximity to their businesses. So we can have 10 clients in one little area, like say Monroe or Shreveport, and a central in-person clinic location where they share that benefit and just pay for their portion of it. And then we have virtual services, and we do advocacy and connect, remote workers or workers who have a specific need to that local resource, even if we don't own it. And we do a
Okay.
lot of education for employers to help people change their behaviors and things like that. We have mental health services. We do dietitian services, and we do physical therapy, both, and all that's on site and virtually as well. So sort of a one stop shop for the highest value add early services to keep people from needing unnecessarily to use those high cost low value services on downstream.
Outstanding. So, what is one thing that you wish more people knew about this business?
About our business, well, I mean, I think that the first thing that company owners or leaders, I wish they would recognize, is that they have so much more ability to control this massive cost, and and they can create some agency in this space, not only for themselves but for their employees. And it's sort of like a Stockholm syndrome, I feel like, where they've been just hammered for so long, about how well the costs are going up, and we're going to have to, take away this service, that they don't realize there's another way to do it.
Very
But it's
cool.
tough, I mean, yeah,
Well, let me
it's
let me
tough for
ask you
them
this,
to
Mark.
make that leap. Mhm.
Um, what occurs to me is, you have these great opportunity for people who have employees to really take a different avenue, right? Something that will be more beneficial for the people that they have working with them. Um, how big does a company need to be to work with you? I mean, they're self-insured. They have a certain amount of employees.
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. It depends on it. We sort of can adapt to, how big the company is. If we have a collaborative clinic in that geographic proximity, there's no constraints. Like, we have clients here in Monroe who have four employees in our area, and they subscribe to the clinic, and they just pay for those four employees as a subscription service. So there's no limitations as far as size if it's a collaborative clinic. If you've got a business that has, uh, anywhere, probably the lower ceiling, the break even for this to cover the budget for a standalone single client clinic would be about 600 to 700 people, and then you include dependents. Um, that would that would cover an on-site clinic, or a clinic where the employees in that one particular area can be a sole client, and it functions more as a cost plus model where you're just paying for the expenses of a clinic, and just a small management fee. So, like, you know, the cost plus model I really like because it's completely transparent, and you have even more control, about what services you want and what services you don't. And we're flexible because we can add stuff if there's a need, and if there's not a need, we can take it away. If we use a cotton ball or a tongue depressor in the clinic and it costs 5 cents, we're going to invoice you 5 cents. There's no markup. We don't make money that way. The money comes from the service. And ultimately, in the larger scope of this business, I want to make money, obviously, like everybody, but I want to do it by scale, not by wringing out one particular client. And healthcare and in most businesses, right? You're either an inclusive model where you add value and the client achieves more benefit than cost, or you're an extractive model where you're really just adding value for yourself at the client's expense. And I never want to be in that second group.
All right, all right. Well, like any other business, it takes a lot of things to happen, right? It takes a village, really. Uh, and so I wanted to turn a little bit onto the um, let's call it the high points. Like, what are the points in your development where you felt, wow, this is good, this is working, right? Are there any memorable moments like that?
Yeah, we're constant. I can think of a bunch. The first was when we started with CenturyLink. Uh, we got the ball rolling, opened up the doors. We had a little outreach, and I was a little disappointed in how many people were using the clinic. Like I thought, oh my gosh, we're gonna have, 25, 30 people a day coming in, and we only had maybe 10 or 12 people, and it built up. Uh, but I didn't really understand like how much waste there was in the status quo healthcare system because we weren't that busy the first 3 months. And we met their HR director, their global benefits director came down from Vancouver, Washington, and she had some reports here in Monroe, and she invited us out to dinner. I'm like, oh boy, this is, we're going to get the hatchet. Even though we had some really good we had some really good stories to tell about how people love the clinic and all this kind of stuff. I was just like, we're just not making the numbers. And she said, well, I've got some news. She said, we did an analytics, we had our third party analytics broker, um, which was Aon Hewitt. They looked at everything, and you've already saved us $350,000 in healthcare costs in 3 months. I was like, I just sat there. I didn't. It was a shock. She's like, you basically paid for the construction of the clinic and the entirety of its of the budget. And that just kept rolling. So I was like, we are on to something huge here. And and then we started getting stories of rank and file employees calling the C-suite people, or at least however high as they could get. And, I mean, usually people don't make a big effort to employees don't make a big effort to reach out to you to tell you how great everything is, right? They're
Right.
just going to call when it goes wrong. And the CFO, Stuart Ewing, called me and he said, I've gotten 3 calls this week, and they were just like from the accounting department or the IT guys, and they said, this clinic that you guys put in, this is the best thing you have ever done for this company. And this kind and they're a Fortune 150 tech company. It's a huge organization, and to hear that was just amazing. Um, we we typically will pick out a couple of stories to present on our quarterly calls about people who, like, what would you have done if this service had not been available? And we've caught things early, and we've facilitated people getting care and situations like brain tumors and undiagnosed diabetes and things like that, where we just get this constant flood of positive reinforcement about the way we're doing. It's really gratifying. Um, so we're years into it now, and we have some smaller clients, and wasn't really sure if we could replicate those kind of results. But one of our earliest buy-in to a collaborative model was a company called Poly Processing, who's run by Dixon Abel, and he's got a few different businesses within his corporation, and there's about 100 people that joined up with our collaborative model in the clinic where they are in Monroe, and they have a third party analytics company that they partner with because they're in a captive insurance model, which is a much bigger organization for their healthcare. Sorry, their health insurance. Yeah, I do it myself. Um, and we had a meeting around the holidays with that analytics company who also came here to present to us, and they're based out of DC and Pennsylvania. And they said we just wanted to come and give you this news in person. They said essentially they're spending, AbleCore is spending about $50 per person per month on the healthcare subscription for you, and they've saved $600 per member per month in this first year. So they were like, we just want to make sure we've got all our numbers correct, and we went through everything. Yeah, that's their return. So, I was in a meeting with a big company earlier this week, and I said, "Do you have any other vendor that'll give you a 10 times ROI?" And they were like, "No, not even close." So we're in a really good position, and I feel really fired up like every day when I do this because of those kind of stories. And again, it's not, it's not by we're not realizing those kind of cost savings by denying people care or telling them, where they have to go for healthcare or constraining. We're giving them more. The people who are saving that money, they're getting more primary care than somebody in that company or in that panel's book of business that doesn't use our clinic. So
Amazing.
it's a win-win. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, it really sounds inspiring, and I'm sure we can probably spend hours on just discussing the details on these.
I could
For the
talk
purpose
all
of
day
this
long.
interview, let me then go to the more difficult parts, right? Like, in growing, in having to provide these services, I'm sure you hit certain, let's call it, obstacles. You found obstacles in your way, and you needed
Mm,
to overcome them. So,
yeah,
any of those memorable enough that really shifted the way that you think?
absolutely. Yeah. So our main client was CenturyLink that transformed into Lumen Technologies, and they had a bunch of employee centers, and we had 3 clinics with them, and we had 5 more planned. I was like, oh, we're on a rocket ship. This is gonna be great. And then COVID hit, and everybody went home, and so we continued to operate our clinics, and people continued to come, but ultimately Lumen made that decision like a lot of companies have done, whether to stay home or work from work. And they elected to be more of a work from home company. And so that they divested the majority of their real estate. And really, I didn't know what was going to happen. That was sort of our, the backbone of our company was this client. And we hadn't really had a chance to take that narrative and translate it into collecting more clients. So we pivoted, and we instead of concentrating solely on in-person services, we went virtual, like a lot of healthcare providers did in the COVID period, and we shifted a lot toward education and advocacy for them and connection of resources, wherever those employees were across the country. So we went from operating in 2 states to technically now we operate in about 22 states, which
Wow.
so it worked out for us, yeah. And then we developed the collaborative model to where we could take a group of smaller businesses and group them into one area or one clinic within a geographic area.
And
So, but
so,
yeah, that was a big
it's almost like, because of these challenges, because of these things that you had to overcome, you had to find a different way, and it shifted the paradigm. So what's the lesson here, really?
I think the lesson, if there's people, and I feel a little sheepish giving business advice as a physician, people often look at me when I explain to them what I'm doing. They kind of cock their head and they say, "You know a lot about business for a physician," which is kind of like telling, kind of like congratulating people for being the valedictorian of summer school. It's because when most of us are not very good at business. That's a that's a true stereotype. Uh, but I heard along the way somewhere that uh, you shouldn't really complain about problems in business. That is the very definition of business is solving problems, and they're always going to come. You know, so I think that mindset of okay, we're in the business of solving problems, not making money, not creating widgets, not the not the day to day. The big high level thing for everybody, I think, is solving problems. And the challenge is how do you solve those problems and continue to be that inclusive partner where the the partner that you're serving is going to do better while you do okay, not the other way around.
Right.
Um, yeah, so that's the real mission, I think, of any kind of business or any kind of charity or government project or relationship is to put the other person, the other group first, and not to the point where it consumes you or is a detriment to you, but if you put your partner's needs first, then you're going to benefit from that.
Very, very good. Okay. And so, we've gone through a lot of these today, and again, we could probably spend hours upon hours going through all these things. Let's fast forward and now look into the future. What do you see happening in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, so like I said, because I've imposed this, you know, this idea that I'm gonna stay in charge and not take on outside investors and dilute control. It's a mission driven company. The next 10 years for me is to transition to where um, I'm devoting part of my time to Core Medical and then the other part to my private cardiology practice. Um, and this would be regardless of whether or not I had Core Medical. I'm going to continue to slow down in my private medical practice to the point where, I'll retire, obviously, because it's getting harder and harder to be a physician uh, in the regular fee for service arena. There's only so much we can do. The government has devalued private practice physicians for the last 10 years, and it's very difficult. There's hardly anybody left in private practice. And I told my wife, I'll go drive a bus before I go work for somebody else. I just don't believe, it just doesn't fit with me. I'd probably get fired in 6 months anyway. I got kicked out of the Cub Scouts when I was a kid. I just don't take. I'm not. I have to be in
There
charge.
are some issues with authority there, Dan.
So
Okay, I get it. I get it.
yeah, a little bit. Yeah, that's another podcast, probably with a counselor rather than a business coach. But at any rate, uh, I want to grow Core Medical, and not necessarily. I don't feel that push to grow it in an exponential way where you hear these stories like, yeah, we took on millions of dollars and we all of a sudden we were all over the place. We had a hard time keeping up and this and that. I want to grow it geometrically and geographically to where we can serve each business that we take on to where they feel like we're not distracted by other things. And we've been able to do that so far. And we've grown from one business, which was a huge company, and we still have that client. And we've got about a dozen different clients now in different parts of the country. And just, I, you know, I don't want to grow or move fast and break things. Our sort of internal company slogan is move slowly and heal things.
Very
It's
cool.
kind of corny.
Okay.
It's kind of corny, but it
No,
works.
no, no, no. But I mean, the simplicity of it is what drives, right?
Yeah,
It's easier to communicate what your intentions are to people when your statements are simple, right? Like, I mean,
absolutely.
it's very clear to me that you know, your philosophy at work is, we're gonna do well by you,
Yeah.
everyone, the employer and the employees, right? And so, it's almost like you want to become the next sliced bread, if I may put it that way.
I used to say I've gained a lot of confidence in the feedback that we've gotten from our patients and from the business leaders. And I used to go into a pitch meeting and say, um, this would be a really good idea for you to do. Uh, to where now, I've got that confidence, and I'm sort of a cocky guy to begin with. But I say, if you don't do this with the way your company is set up and the money you're spending on this, on healthcare, if you don't do this, it's a huge missed opportunity. You're making a mistake. So, um, I see businesses who adopt a more internalized or vertical structure to their healthcare as having a real competitive advantage, especially in the coming years, because the status quo is unsustainable. You know,
And it's becoming even more and more difficult to navigate. Well, we
yes.
certainly have covered a lot of ground on this conversation today. And for those who are watching, I highly encourage you to save these and come back a few times for an additional watch. There's a lots of great nuggets here, right? And so as we begin to wrap up, Mark, I have a few rapid fire questions. Okay, top of head
Okay.
answers, quick for each. Okay, so what is
Okay.
the key to success for you?
Um, compulsion and compassion.
All right, I'm gonna have you elaborate on that. What does that mean to you?
There's a physician who was a mentor of mine in Baton Rouge when I was in medical school. I was in medical school in New Orleans, and I did some turns in Earl K. Long Hospital in Baton Rouge. And George Karam said, "You only need two things to be a good physician. You don't have to be the smartest. You don't have to be able to, remember everything out of a book. You need two qualities: compulsion and compassion. You need to be curious, and if something, you need to explore every detail and ask why. And then you need to keep, in mind that the people that you're serving are more than a problem. They're real people, and you have to have empathy for them. And if you can do that, then you can tackle anything basically. And I think that translates to outside of the medical field.
It really does. I love that. So, what is one piece of advice you have for other business owners?
Other businesses, take control of your healthcare. You can do it.
Love it. What is one book you're reading right now or have read recently that you think everybody should read?
Uh, I'm in my second go around because it's such a dense, complicated book. Nassim Taleb's Anti-Fragile, and it's about how you know there's things that fall apart with wear and tear. There's things that hold up, but really the ultimate way to uh, create um, lasting success is to make things anti-fragile, where wear and tear actually makes them stronger.
Very good. Very good. If you had to choose only one area of your business you could immediately improve tomorrow, what would that be?
Uh, Sales and marketing.
Ain't that the true? I think that that's true for almost everybody. But I get
Yeah.
it. I get it. So before we get into the final question of the day, how can other people learn more about you or your company? How can they get in touch with you?
So we have I guess the impersonal way is the website at coremedical.net. We have an email where you can ask questions at info@coremedical.net. My email address is Mark Napoli, just all one word, or Mark Napoli, depending on what part of the country you're in, at coremedical.net. And we have a YouTube channel. There's stuff on LinkedIn, and I think Laura has some stuff on Facebook. I don't go on Facebook, so I don't know.
And so, last question, Mark, and thank you for these. What do you find is most inspiring for you today?
Most inspiring. Well, I just I try and take a walk every morning with the dogs near the lake, and I think about how fortunate I am, and I just remind myself to be grateful, for my wife and my family, and the amazing people that we've got in our company, but also just the community that I live in. We have Monroe is a an exquisitely unique place where it's it's this sort of semi-rural community, and there's so many high functioning and amazing people who live here. I love being here, and yeah, I mean, just I try and be grateful for all that, and that kind of inspires me to do the best I can every day.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Mark, and sharing all these with
Yeah, I
us.
enjoyed it.
Thank you to the audience for watching and sharing. You never know who you might inspire by sending this interview and having them listen to it. Um, Thank you and make it a great time. Until next time.
All right, terrific.